So for those of you who didn't see my video explaining what the Amazon Associates program is and how it's going to work with this channel, let me do a brief recap on that for a moment. So Amazon has created a program called the Amazon Associates program that helps YouTube creators such as myself in a way to monetize our channel. Because as you probably know, YouTube has become stricter and stricter about what they want to monetize on YouTube for their platform. It's becoming very hard for YouTube creators to make money from their videos the way they used to, or to grow their channels with income the way that they used to. The reason why is they're saying it's not advertiser friendly. Point in case, when you report the subjects that mainstream media doesn't talk about, it's not advertiser friendly. So they won't monetize your videos. So if you do shopping on Amazon, if you make purchases, you go to the link below, you click on it, it takes you to Amazon just like you normally would go to Amazon. You can then search for whatever product it is you wanted to buy, and by making that purchase after clicking on the link, this channel will get a commission of that sale. And it is a great way to help support this channel and help us spread our message and grow this channel so that we can reach more and more people out there. So we thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoy the video. So a recent subscriber commented on a YouTube video, I think it was the most recent one that I just uploaded, wanting to ask a serious question about where my stance is more or less on the issue with guns. So just go ahead and let's just read the comment here, and I will try to elaborate on that best as possible. What is the argument for allowing people to have automatic guns? Can't be the Second Amendment. We lost that battle decades ago. Meaning, if people formed a militia with everything they had and the government wanted to attack, it would just be drone strikes. Meaning, purpose of militia is already ineffective. So I don't know what the argument is anymore. And if the only argument is hunting or sport, or just because people like guns, then I would vote for safety over that. Is there any real argument left here? I'm really asking. So, trying to take that down step by step. First of all, automatic guns are definitely a no-no anyway. I mean, they've been banned for quite some time. The issue right now is they're trying to come after semi-automatic guns with high-capacity magazines. So there's two aspects to what they really want to come after right now on this restriction issue with the gun, assault weapons ban, so on and so forth. The first thing that they say they want to do is get rid of high capacity magazines, that you shouldn't be allowed to have over a certain amount of ammunition within your gun. So unlike traditional hunting rifles where you may only have maybe 5 to 10 rounds, I think 10's really pushing it there. You can buy drums to put on like something like an AR-15, has nearly 30 rounds in it. So that's a huge difference right there. So they want to take that away and restrict how much ammunition you can buy. And that is probably the one place where they have the most wiggle room to actually really do something that bypasses the Constitution, because the Constitution says you have the rights to have the guns. It says nothing about ammunition. So that's probably one issue where, unfortunately, the Constitution is going to be a little gray, and they can definitely do restrictions on that, and probably there's no legal precedent that the Constitution can argue back against. So that's part one. But part two is they're coming after the actual guns themselves. So yes, of course, there was an assault weapons ban. Dianne Feinstein was behind. It happened back in the 90s. A lot of current presidents at that time were behind it. I think including even Reagan was behind the assault weapons ban in the 90s. And then, of course, that bill expired. They came back. You've got the AR-15s out there on the market. And here is the problem. People are not... what I have found is a lot of people who listen to the push to take away the guns. And I don't mean this as any sort of an insult or any sort of disrespect. This is just an observation. Not many know a lot about all the different types of guns out there. And I had to make a video about this not too long ago. For example, the way it seems like society works is when the media covers a mass shooting and they talk about the gun used in that mass shooting, there are other sick, crazy people out there who hear it and they want some sort of crazy, sick claim to fame, so they go out and they do the same thing and try to imitate it. When they hear the AR-15 and that gets talked about so much even after the shootings, because you've got politicians and news anchors sitting around saying they should be taken off the market, this is encouraging more and more people. Oh, that's the gun I need to go get. Okay? But what you don't know is that there are guns on the market right now that you're not hearing anything about that could do way more damage than an AR-15. And I would invite you to go back and look at one of my older videos that I actually show pictures of the AR-15 damage versus what one of these semi-automatic shotguns can do. So they make shotguns such as a KS-12. It's a Kalashnikov gun. Same company that makes a AK-47. Okay? You can get that. You've also got things like the Saiga 12. All these different shotguns you could put, big drums on, or big, magazine clips, just like you could put it into an AR-15, but you're not shooting AR-15 rounds, you're shooting 12 gauge shotgun rounds or buckshot. If you walked into a crowded place and turned loose with one of those guns, you're going to do a lot of damage. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that those should be banned. Don't get me wrong. I'm just making the point. I'm establishing why when you hear them telling you, oh, these guns need to go, they're playing to fear. They're playing to fears. And they have allocated this gun because it has been used in a couple of shootings, and they have turned it into a boogeyman to get people afraid of it in order to willingly be willing to give up their Second Amendment right. And most people see what's happening and then use the same thought process as was used here. Well, we can't have automatic guns. The military is going to have drones. How can we possibly defend ourselves anyway? And in this case, I think I'd rather just go for the safety issue. So, here's the two things I would like people to remember. Okay? First of all, were the Vietnamese in the Vietnam War that well armed? I mean, did they have us outgunned, outmatched as far as artillery was concerned? No. You can go listen to clips of Jesse Ventura when he made his argument on why the Second Amendment is still important. Okay? The Viet Cong stood up against, the American troops, and they were not armed nowhere near like we were. Now, of course, if we wanted to just drop the hammer on them, I'm sure we could have done a lot of damage, but nonetheless, we ended up having to pull out of that war. And the North Vietnamese pretty much won. Okay, so even going back to the Revolutionary War, the British definitely had us outmatched, outsupplied, and outgunned. We used our tactics. We won. Okay, and here's the thing. While, yes, there may be drones and this and that, if things broke down into a civil war, more or less, between the government and the people, I don't think that there's that much of the U.S. military that would just stand completely against the people. Because there may be some, but I'm sure there's going to be a few that say, hell no, I'm not doing this, and they would join up with the people to fight back against the government that has become tyrannical, especially if they're able to get guns and arms outside the military. And if we were to march on the Capitol with our arms, we'd probably take it. Okay? We'd overthrow their drones. So, of course, yeah, there's definitely going to be casualties if some crazy situation like that ever came to pass, but as long as the people are armed, they've got a chance. You don't have to have a rocket launcher. Okay? We would have at least a fighting chance. Even if the guns aren't automatic, we would still have a chance at overthrowing the government if it ever got to that point. But they're doing this strategically. They're doing this in levels. The first thing that they're doing is they're trying to come after how many bullets you can own. How many bullets can your gun fire? We're going to cut back on that first and foremost. Then we're going to use our propaganda media to tell you what we want you to hear. We're going to give you a boogeyman to be afraid of. We're going to play to your fears. You know, they say Donald Trump plays to people's fears. This is exactly what the mainstream media is doing. They play to the fears. They give you a boogeyman in the form of this AR-15 to be afraid of. They make you think it's far too deadly to be on the streets. They make you think that it is a military weapon. It is not. It is a close relative, I guess you could say, to the M16. That is a military weapon. The AR-15 is not. Another common misconception is that they think that the AR-15 is an assault rifle. They say, well, that's definitely got to be. Well, yeah, even my own grandpa, and I said this in another video, even my own grandpa thought that AR and AR-15 stood for assault rifle. It does not. It stands for Armalite, the company who developed it. Okay? So, again, they give you the boogeyman, they get you afraid, and then you are willing to say, well, you know what? We wouldn't have a chance. We can't defend ourselves really against this government if they became tyrannical anyway. So you know what? To help maybe stop some of these shootings here, go ahead. Take my gun. If you had one. Okay? Forefathers of this country and the founding fathers of this country knew that there was the possibility that one day people would have that sort of thought process. They knew that that was a possibility all the way back in 1776, okay? And reasons like that are probably why Ben Franklin made the comment that anyone who would give up their freedom or their liberty for their safety shall have and deserve neither. In other words, if you give up your rights and your freedoms, whether it be because the government has made you afraid and make you think that you need to do that for their protection, you need to give up your rights so the government will protect you, guess what? You won't be protected and you won't have your rights. That's what's going to happen. Okay? So I understand where a lot of people are coming from on this gun argument. They see what's going on out there in the world around us, and they're afraid. They're afraid, and they're deeply concerned because they see far too many gun deaths going on in the country, mass shootings, and it has become horrible. You know, and I don't know that necessarily arming teachers is the way to address it either. But just a few of the things that can certainly be done that can help things is we've got to reform society as a whole, first and foremost. There needs to definitely be a lot done to help with mental health in this country. You know, that's got to be priority number one. And that's really a big problem because you see the same government who's on one wing at least telling you need to give up some of your rights. And I mean, this goes beyond the Second Amendment. You know, they're using the same tactics to try to get you to believe, and they did this when Snowden revealed what the NSA was doing. They used these same fear tactics to try to get you to understand why you needed to allow your Fourth Amendment to be violated. You know, your right to unwarranted search and seizure. Yet after the Patriot Act and what Snowden ended up revealing, when Obama made things even worse after, you know, Bush and Cheney left office, this mass surveillance state that we had going on, okay, and of course when all it comes out, you hear all the people on the debate stage when they get asked about it, such as on the Republican side, well, we need this in place because we're trying to catch the terrorists, and so we have to have this around. I think the only one who really stood up and said, yeah, this is some BS was Rand Paul. Okay? But these same people who are trying to use these fear tactics to tell you why you need your rights taken away in order to be safe, again, mental health has had a lot to do with a lot of people. Now, a stronger background check, sure. I mean, that's, you know, I'll give you no argument on that. Okay? But, again, mental health has definitely been a big reason for why these people have done this. There's something not right with these people. No sane, rational person is going to go do what they did. So there's something wrong with them. Now, this government has really hurt funding and care to the mentally ill. Now, to go into a little more detail about what I mean by how they have messed it up, let's go back, since we're in the October month and we're not too far as days away from this event in history, the last piece of legislation that JFK ever signed into law. Okay? Last piece of legislation President John F. Kennedy signed turns 50 this month. Now, this is from 2013, so of course it's in 50 now. The Community Mental Health Act, which helped transform the way people with mental illness are treated and cared for in the United States. Signed on October 31st, 1963, weeks before Kennedy was assassinated, the legislation aimed to build mental health centers accessible to all Americans so that those with mental illness could be treated while working and living at home rather than being kept in neglectful and often abusive state institutions, sometimes for years on end. And unfortunately, that's still what a lot of people have to live in today, and the conditions are just really not the best in the world. You know, they may be better today than they were back then, but this was a big reason for why Kennedy took action. Okay? Kennedy said when he signed the bill that the legislation to build 1,500 centers would mean the population of those living in state mental hospitals at the same time, more than 500,000 people, could be cut in half. In a special message to Congress earlier that year, he said the idea was to successfully and quickly treat patients in their own communities and return them to a useful place in society. Recent deadly mass shootings, including the Washington Navy Yard and a Colorado movie theater, have been perpetuated by men who were apparently not being adequately treated for serious mental illness. Those tragedies have focused public attention on the mental health system and made clear that the Kennedys' vision was never fully realized. Okay? The legislation did help usher in positive life-altering changes for people with serious illnesses such as schizophrenia, many of whom now live normal, productive lives with jobs and families. In 1963, the average stay in a state institution for someone with schizophrenia was 11 years, but only half of the proposed centers were ever built, and those were never fully funded. Now we get to the heart of the problem here. So the government has been just sitting on their hands and doing nothing about this issue for over 50 years. Okay? Kennedy's last act before his assassination was to try to get the ball rolling on this issue. They've done nothing. Democrats and Republicans. Nothing. And if anything, if I'm not mistaken, I think Trump's most recent budget proposal actually made cuts to that division. I mean, we don't need cuts in funding mental health in this country. I think for most people who have reasonable judgment and sense can look around at the world around us and tell the cuckoo clock is, about to jump. Let me put it like this. The cuckoo's about to jump out of the clock. He's chiming so much here. Okay? The whole country, a good chunk of it, has gone absolutely nuts. In more ways than one. Okay? Everything from the issue that's going on right now to sports, to how divided we are, the whole country is in a state of chaos. Chaos. Okay? And mental health, I do think, has a lot to do with it. Okay? Something that I'm curious about, maybe this could be contributing to it. I'm not one of the people that say the vaccines are, damaging people or whatever. But all these pills that people take, for example, I've often wondered all the medications that people have to take. They say the reasons you shouldn't be, doing drugs, heavily drinking or smoking. Obviously, you don't do it during the pregnancy, but I've heard other doctors warn that you shouldn't do it when you're trying to have children, because it can actually affect, your DNA, and then it, could weaken it up. It could possibly increase the chances of some sort of defect in the children. Now, you look at all these medications that people take and all these side effects that comes with, this is just speculation, but I've often wondered, could any of that have something to do with some of this stuff, perhaps? I mean, I'm just guessing. But nonetheless, back to the bigger point here, and that is there definitely needs to be more funding on mental health. There definitely needs to be more treatment for mental health. I think if we address that, and the other thing is we stop giving all these people doing this crazy stuff the attention that they so desperately crave for. Don't talk about them all over the news. I get you got to cover the story. I'm not saying we should pretend like it doesn't happen. But when you give these people all that fame, yeah, of course they're not being looked at as a role model, except to the sickos out there who would look at that and say, that's how I'm going to become famous. If they did it, that's what I'm going to do to be, memorialized in history. That's a lot of their motive. And it's just because they are, not all there. Not all there. And some people are trying to blame it on those things that are on TV. Some people are trying to blame it on like video games, so on and so forth. At the end of the day, I hear a lot of people trying to rebut that argument and say there's absolutely nothing to it. I think there is, but I don't necessarily blame the content as much as I blame bad parenting and things like that. As a parent, you shouldn't let your kids see these sorts of things at young ages. And unfortunately, there's a lot of little kids who get, a video game like Grand Theft Auto. It's not appropriate for a little kid. Call of Duty, I don't think is appropriate for a little kid. There's a lot of little kids who have it. There's a lot of little kids, something else that they've started today, giving kids cell phones. They can literally find nearly anything they want to. It's irresponsible. And I think things like that, when you're exposed to it at too young of an age, may have an effect on how your brain develops over time. I mean, I really do. If you're exposed too much of that, it's going to affect your thought process later on in life. In your formative years as a small child, if you're looking at a lot of, blood gushing out of head from a kill shot in a video game, zombies chasing you around with grotesque skin and blood drooling all out of their mouth, and and you're looking at things like that as a young kid, it is probably going to have some effect on you as you get older. So, and again, bad parenting, I think, is a root cause there. But the guns are not going to shoot themselves. I get that the left does not want to acknowledge this argument, but that gun, if it's sitting in a safe at home, is never going to hop out of that damn safe and shoot anyone. Period. It's all about responsibility. And you can't say justifiably that because of bad people making bad decisions, that everyone has to be punished because there's idiots. That everyone has to give up their rights to have guns to protect themselves, their family, and yeah, some people are going to come back and go, well, do you need a gun that powerful? Maybe not for the common robber, no. But I do fear this government. I do fear that there's a possibility it could turn tyrannical. I think they've been slowly, a lot of these swamp creatures on Capitol Hill have been slowly trying to become tyrannical over the years. And so, if one day things get to that point, yeah, you're going to have to come pry it out of my cold, dead hands. Okay? I mean, that's just my stance on it. And I've had this sort of issue at jobs before, where there's the mentality that because, 8 of the 10 employees, and that's just a random number, there was more than that, but just say 8 out of the 10 employees follow the rules. But because there's 2 who wouldn't, because 2 people kept getting caught on their phone, the decree comes down from on high, no one can be on their phone at all during the shift or you'll be written up. Here's an idea. Why don't you write up those incorrigible employees who wouldn't get off their phone? See, that's the problem with the politically correct world we're in. No one wants to hold the people responsible. They immediately go, well, look at the possibility here. Look at the possibility. This could keep happening. So we just need to take them all away. Well, another argument that you may want to hear on this guns issue is the right likes to say, well, if you take the guns off the streets, there's still going to be illegal dealers out there selling them. People are going to get their weapons one way or the other. So the fact is, okay, while we have more gun deaths in the world, and of course, people are, when they're looking at that statistic, are not factoring out how much of that is suicide, how much of that is, police shootings, things of that nature. That's not being factored out of that, so keep that in mind first and foremost. Yes, we are way ahead of the rest of the world, but our violent crime, I mean, if you think they're not having violent crime in countries like the UK, yeah, sure, okay. The same day of Sandy Hook, there was a mass stabbing incident in China. But you don't hear about that very much at all. These sick people, they're going to exist, and you're not really going to be able to do much about it unless you improve the mental health system in the country. That's the solution. Not trying to take weapons away from people and disarm everyone so that the only thing they could do is try to run in a crowded room and just punch people. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And you're going to start taking away people's constitutional rights. I get the concern. It just isn't going to work the way that you think it is. It's only opening the doors for you to lose more of your rights, become more unsafe from your own government because they're going to become more tyrannical and they're going to come after more of your rights, especially when there's no way you really have any sort of a chance of standing up to them because they've taken your guns away. That's why so many dictatorships came after the guns as their first line of business, to get the guns so the people couldn't rise up. I mean, you go throughout history and look at all the communist, dictators who've done that. Okay? That's the reason. That's why they want those guns off the street. And so they it's like I said earlier, they play to people's fear and they use that as a tool. But a big argument, okay, that you might want to know for why you would still like to have the guns, okay, and then this is my final point on this. That final point is this. This government, who has not given the proper tools to the mental health system in this country to treat it. This same government who's telling you you need to give up how many bullets you can own, what kind of guns you can own, so on and so forth, okay? This same government that's telling you we need less guns in this country is still the biggest arms dealer in the world. So a big argument from the right wing is that, well, they're going to find a way to get them regardless. Take Chicago, for example. Strict gun laws, plenty of guns. Maybe they're getting them out of state, maybe they're not. Doesn't matter. They're still getting the guns. They're still getting the guns. How long has our government been fighting a war on drugs? Quite a while, right? How many people are dying from fentanyl How many people were smoking pot before states started legalizing it? That just because the government makes it illegal, the only people who are not going to participate are the ones who genuinely just try to obey the law and follow the rules. But if you think that's going to have any sort of a bearing on whether or not that it actually stops the problem, no. If anything, you're just going to start trying to encourage more people, I don't know, make homemade explosives, homemade guns. People have done that. So it's going to continue until you start treating the mental health in this country. But again, I find it very hypocritical that the government telling us that we don't need to have these guns are still the biggest arms dealer out there in the world. And some of these countries they sell guns to, the guns end up back in the black market as a result of it. When they end up in the black market, that means they could end up where? Black market means the underground criminal world, basically. So the government telling you don't need this gun could then be selling real military style weapons to other countries who are then going to turn around and sell some of these guns back into the criminal world's hands, or the jihadis like Saudi Arabia has done. Okay, so the very criminal you wanted to have that gun to protect from could end up getting that gun from the government at the end of the day, possibly, who's told you a less deadly gun was too dangerous for you to own. If that's not hypocritical, I don't know what is. I mean, period. So again, I understand where the concerns are coming from on the issue, but giving up your freedom and your rights is not the way to handle it. It's a society problem. It needs to be addressed as society, mental health treatment, and stop all the infighting. As a society, we should really start trying to work together more and to focus more on our education. People need better educations. Some other things that contribute to a lot of this stuff. People not feeling like they're getting a fair shake in life. Not getting the proper education that they need to try to go somewhere in life. Teachers that are not really, but because of massive classrooms or whatever, they're not getting the time to spend that one-on-one time with students to help them out. Or they feel like they can't go to college because they don't have the money to pay for a bunch of classes when they may only need 1, 2, or 3 of those classes, and yet they're having to take like 15 to 20. And they have to pay for all of them unless they get funding. I mean, there's a lot of different issues in this country that could be leading to why people are doing what they're doing today. That's where the focus should be at, okay? That's really what the root problem here is, and society needs to start addressing those problems first. What's causing these people to go do these things? That's what has to be fixed first at the end of the day. The whole thing about taking your rights away, though, that is a government that has already been violating your constitutional rights, trying to give you a boogeyman to be afraid of so they can just simply take away more of them. So that's my stance on it, and that's my argument as to why, the gun reform issue, while I agree with better background checks and whatnot, the issue of seizing guns and this and that, no. And the one thing, and I'm not sure if you maybe meant to put semi-automatic in the comment, but the automatics are definitely, if you got an automatic and you get caught with that, you're already in deep crap, to put it nicely for YouTube. So, I mean, that you're already up the creek without a paddle if you get caught with the automatic. That's illegal now. But the semi-automatic issue, the other thing is, you notice the language, speaking of semi-automatic, you hear a lot of these politicians say we need to get the semi-automatic off the streets. Do you know what gun isn't a semi-automatic, basically? Revolver. Or, bolt action rifles. Pump action rifles. things like that. Double barrel shotgun that just holds 2 rounds. Yeah. But pretty much everything else semi-automatic. Semi-automatic only means that you insert clip, cock once to get 1 round into chamber, and each pull of the trigger fires a round. That's like basically every gun for the most part. I mean, that's, well, not every gun, but the predominant majority of guns in this country are semi-automatic guns. Okay, so when you just use the term, we want to get the semi-automatic guns off the streets. Oh, good God. See, that's where you really got to be careful, because that is a very big umbrella to put over this issue. That means you could come after basically all guns. The only thing we're going to have is old Western 6-shooters at that point, right? Yeah, if that's all people are allowed to have is some old Western 6-shooter hand revolvers, yeah, there's no way we'd ever be able to do, stand up to our government if they became tyrannical. Yeah, we're definitely not going to have a chance of shooting down a drone with a little pea shooter. Okay, that's just it's not going to happen. So, but that's my argument as to why, that it's going on. Yes, the government has come against guns in the past, when they took the Tommy guns off the streets and things like that. But, again, there's still been a pushback on those rights. Some people keep making the argument, and unfortunately now the government's using propaganda tools to promote fear, to get people afraid of the rights that they have. I mean, and then they're doing it with so many different rights, you may not even realize it. They've done it with your First Amendment right by trying to tell you, oh, well, when so-and-so uses hate speech, while hate speech may be horrible and grotesque, we should just be allowed to silence that person. They shouldn't be allowed to talk. All because you don't like what they're saying. And society has slowly become more indoctrinated to be accepting of this. No. This country gave even the most horrible of people a First Amendment right to say what they wanted to say. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have the right to tell them they can't speak. Period. Okay? If you don't like it, don't listen. Go away. Walk off. You don't have to stand there and listen to the racism and all the BS. Go away. Walk away from it. Okay? Let karma deal with that jackass. Okay? But you can't shut him up just because you don't want to hear what he has to say. Okay? Again, your Fourth Amendment right. Because George Bush had terrorists to catch, we're going to start bypassing your Fourth Amendment right to protect you from the terrorists. And then, of course, it snowballed from there. And they're probably still violating your Fourth Amendment right quite frequently today. Let's be honest. Okay? I mean, we could just sit here and go through the long list, but we've already made I've already took this video on for quite a bit, so maybe we'll cover that in a different video one day. But that's my big argument. Okay, I get where people's concerns are, but a lot of people who are accepting of it simply because of their concern and all because the government's saying so, you're playing right into the government's hands, plain and simple. You're the perfect little puppet. And I'm not saying this to anyone as a sign of disrespect. I understand what people's concerns are on the issue. I really do want people to understand that. I'm just trying to get the point across. The government is sitting here trying to push your buttons and play you like a fiddle. And you don't realize just how many other rights you may have that they've done the same technique on. Now they're trying to do the guns. But the guns is the one thing that has been a huge part of this country since before we had that Constitution. The guns and the whiskey, okay? Because during Prohibition, that was another That was another thing that didn't go over too well at one point in the country. Guns and whiskey have been a big part of this country for a long, long time. One of the first big uprisings after George Washington became president was when the government tried to tax whiskey. Okay? So those are two things that have been a huge part of this country since its founding. And when you try to target them and take them away, you're definitely going to get pushback. And at this point, some of the rhetoric and some of the language you hear these people using is not just an issue of, well, we're just trying to save lives. You listen to what they're saying and you will start to hear there's an underlying reason that they're just not making too clear up front. They're not just coming out right and saying what their real stance is. They're playing to your fears, giving you these couple examples, telling you we're going to do this, when in the back of their mind, they really just want to just start taking all the guns away. Take Beto O'Rourke, for example. A while back, what was his thing? If you've got your gun, you can keep your gun. No one's coming after your guns. What did he just say in the third debate? Hell yeah, we're going to take it away. Okay. Went from here to here. So, that's my argument. I mean, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is there. And I know some people try to make the argument that, well, it's not the Ten Commandments. You know, people could be wrong, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Okay? The Bill of Rights, for the most part, covered the basic rights that the Founding Fathers thought we needed to have in this country in order to be a free country and to have liberty. That's the thing about the Bill of Rights. When you say that we should just start being able to take away the Bill of Rights, that's taking away your basic rights to freedom in this country, pretty much. The right to protect yourself. The right to not have a tyrannical government come into your home and search for whatever they want without proper warrants. And they've been systematically targeting these things. The Second Amendment is just one of the latest victims, but it's also possibly the most controversial. A lot of people have taken some of their other rights for granted and really don't give too much thought to how the government has actually already targeted and taken some of those rights away. They don't really say too much, but the guns is the issue where you're going to hear all the chaos. Just understand it's not the only one, okay? So again, you know, if you agree, comment. If you disagree, comment. I'm sure this will be a topic that will be discussed more on this channel as time goes on. Different people have different views on this issue, and I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with exactly everything that I've said. And I also want people to understand that there's, you know, by replying to that comment, this is just an exchange of ideas, okay? I mean, no disrespect to anyone. I'm just giving my opinion on this issue from the things that I've observed, studying parts of history, you know, that, and giving my rebuttal to why I don't agree with the whole gun grab issue, okay? So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you got anything, you know, agree or disagree, comment down below. We hope you'll tune into the next video. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like the video. Also, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask or topics you'd like us to cover, please drop a comment in the comment box below. And also, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell so you'll stay up to date when we drop new videos and you'll get notifications of it. And also, please support us on Patreon. Funds are going to be used to grow and improve this channel so we can reach more and more people and spread the message that the mainstream media doesn't want to tell people. We hope you'll tune in next time.